Today, we're going to talk about theories of gender. One of the classic debates in the history of pretty much anything is the nature-nurture debate. And it turns out that gender theories are no different. So on the one hand, you have individuals who propose that evolutionary theory has a lot to bear on how we understand why men and women are different. For men, there may be different selective pressures than there are for women, and that results in different phenotypes, different physical features, different behaviors, and so on. And this is something that's true of almost any trait, and sexual characteristics are no different. And this is a well-established biological phenomenon across a wide diversity of both plant and animal species. So it's almost certainly true. This is a pretty safe bet. Now, there have been some things that evolutionary theory, especially as it's related to sex and gender, has reached for as explanations that may or may not be good explanations. One of them is the idea that there are different costs to reproduction for men and women, and this has dramatic impacts, for example, on our behaviors in terms of things like mate choice. So for males, sperm are cheap. You produce millions of them every day, and you can release them all over the place, and you keep making them until you die. And so the cost of an individual sperm is extremely low. So, waste all you want, we'll make more. On the other hand, for women, the individual reproductive cell, the egg, you have a limited time frame in your life to produce them. You have a limited number of eggs. And if one of the eggs becomes fertilized, you have a substantial investment of energy and resources in just gestating the egg, but also in raising the offspring. And so this mismatch, according to the theory, generates different pressures on men and women. It pressures men to be as promiscuous as possible and spread as many sperm around wherever they can, whereas women should be more selective in their mating strategies. Now, this is an interesting idea, I think, but it also is a little bit controversial because it suggests that there are things about mating strategies that really don't explain the behaviors of certain individuals all that well. And so an alternative to evolutionary theory is social theory. And social theories tend to emphasize the nurture aspect. They emphasize the influence of the environment. So they talk about, well, how does a boy come to act like a boy and a girl come to act like a girl? Well, think about how much influence that the society around you has on pushing forward certain social norms, and especially the parents, to the extent to which they conform to those norms, have a profound influence on the development of the kid. So if I see my kid playing with a Barbie and my little boy playing with a Barbie and I rip that out of his hands and give him a dump truck instead, what have I just done? Well, I have created a social norm that when that boy grows up, he's going to do similar things. And that's going to be true for all of the behaviors that they see modeled by men and women. And so really a lot of gender, according to this idea, is a social construction. Now, both of these ideas are sort of extreme views, right? And with any nature-nurture debate, the reality tends to be somewhere in the middle. And it turns out, as usual, we know that nature and nurture interact with each other to produce the ultimate phenotype that you get. Well, this is true, and there's a third theory that I want to talk about here, which is the idea of it's called cognitive developmental theory. And the emphasis isn't so much on nature or nurture, genes or environment. It's more on at what points along the organism's development are nature and nurture exerting their influence. So, for example, early in development, when before you're leaving the womb, for example, while you're gestating, you have biological mechanisms that are creating different hormone levels, androgen hormones and things like that, that start differentiating your body, differentiating your brain, and they are producing changes that are going to influence your behavior and your beliefs for the rest of your life. On the other hand, when you are a toddler and a young early childhood, you are paying a lot of attention to the social environment around you and learning a lot about what's correct for boys to do and what's correct for girls to do. And you're taking those things in and you're using them to help create what we call a schema of your own behavior. Schemas, by the way, are just scripts. They're things that, like I have a schema for a restaurant. I know that when I go into a restaurant, I'm going to walk through the door. Somebody's going to ask me to be seated, wait to be seated, and they're going to lead me to a table. I'm going to sit down, and then first the waiter's going to come by and say, oh, what would you like to drink? And then while they're going and getting the drink, I'm supposed to decide what I want to eat, and so on and so forth. So that's a schema. It's our way of organizing the world and understanding the world. It's a little theory of how the world works that each individual has. So as you're building this gender schema, you're taking information from your environment, you're taking all those biological predispositions, and you're taking your personal developmental history, and you're putting all of those things together to form your personal schema about how genders work. A couple of nuance points here that I want to add. The first one is that it's not always clear in the case of the social situation whether the social influence is a cause for the changes in behavior or whether it's a reflection of predispositions that we may have. Let me clarify. So one of the things you may have heard about with Sigmund Freud is his idea of Oedipal Complex, where all little boys want to have sex with their mothers. According to Freud, the only reason we don't have sex with our mothers is because there's a social taboo about it. And the conflict between the social taboo that prevents us from doing the thing we actually secretly want to do in our subconscious, and then the underlying biological drive to do that thing, those are in conflict with each other and can produce psychological illnesses. And boy, if we didn't have that social taboo, everybody would just be having all kinds of incest left and right. On the other hand, there are biological phenomena that we've observed, such as something called the Westermarck Effect, which is where young individuals who grow up together tend to be less likely to view those individuals that they grew up with, even if whether they're related to them or not, less likely to view those as appropriate mating partners in adulthood. So you can think about that as sort of a biological mechanism that might help drive mate preference and prevent incest. So from that point of view, the social taboo is not the only thing keeping us from engaging in all kinds of incest. Rather, the social taboo is a reflection of this biological predisposition that we have. And so these two different ideas, in one case, the social taboo is the cause of the change in behavior, not having incestual sexual relations. But in the other case, it's a result of the biological predisposition. So that's one piece of nuance. The other piece of nuance I'll say here is that so far I've been talking about male and female in terms of the gender binary. I have not talked about the 2% or 1 in 50 roughly people who are born intersex, where that same developmental process unfolds differently for them. Not better, not worse, but different. And so now these are people who are being thrust into a world in which they have to contend with this gender binary and these social gender roles, which may not fit them well. And so this is going to create all kinds of problems. And I'm sure we'll cover some of these challenges in a future video. But for now, I just wanted to cover the idea that in theories of gender and sex, we tend to have this nature-nurture debate. On the one hand, we have the evolutionary theories. On the other, we have the social theories. Cognitive developmental tries to kind of be a blend of both of those. But any way you slice it, what you wind up with is a gender schema that helps you understand and model the world. Okay, that's all for now, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.